What is the rabbinic dating of the Exodus? Include sources and dating in Hebrew and modern calendar. The rabbinic dating of the Exodus is based on traditional Jewish sources and varies slightly depending on the source. Here are a few examples. 1. According to the Seder Olam Rabbah, a Jewish chronology written in the 2nd century CE, the Exodus took place in the year 2448 after the creation of the world. Using the traditional Jewish calendar, this corresponds to the year 1312 BCE in the modern calendar. 2. The Talmud, a collection of Jewish writings and teachings, mentions several opinions about the date of the Exodus. One opinion suggests that it took place in the year 1313 BCE, while another suggests the year 1273 BCE. 3. Another Jewish tradition, based on the writings of Maimonides, places the Exodus in the year 1314 BCE. It's worth noting that these dates are based on traditional Jewish sources and may not correspond exactly to historical or archaeological evidence. The dating of the Exodus is a subject of ongoing debate and research among scholars. What is the academic dating consensus on the Eitan Revolution? Provides sources and quotes that being said, all of the rabbinic datings mentioned above place the Exodus in the 2nd millennium BCE, several centuries before the traditional dating of the founding of Rome in 753 BCE. The Eitan Revolution, also known as the Amarna period or the Amarna Revolution, refers to the religious and political changes that occurred in ancient Egypt during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. While there is some debate among scholars about the nature and extent of these changes, there is a general academic consensus that the Eitan Revolution represented a significant departure from traditional Egyptian religion and society. For example, in the book The Oxford History of Ancient Egypt, historian Donald Redford writes, "The reign of Akhenaten is one of the most significant episodes in the history of ancient Egypt. It marked a radical departure from the traditional religious and artistic conventions of the land." The king's monotheistic religion, with its emphasis on the Eitan, the sun disk, must have come as a profound shock to the people, as must have the sudden abandonment of the established gods and their cults. Similarly, in the book The Complete Royal Families of Ancient Egypt, Egyptologist Aidan Dodson writes, Akhenaten's reign marked a fundamental break in Egyptian religion, for he rejected the traditional pantheon of deities, replaced it with the worship of a single god, the sun disk, and established a new capital in Middle Egypt at Tel el Amarna. While there is some debate among scholars about the reasons for and extent of the Eitan Revolution, the general consensus is that it represented a significant departure from traditional Egyptian religion and society. In 1312, did Egypt has claim of the biblical Promised Land under the Thutmose dynasty? The Thutmose dynasty, also known as the 18th dynasty of ancient Egypt, was in power during the 14th century BCE, which is roughly the time period associated with the biblical Exodus. However, the question of whether Egypt had a claim to the biblical Promised Land in 1312 BCE is a matter of interpretation and debate. According to the biblical account in the Book of Exodus, the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt and then led out of Egypt by Moses under the guidance of God. After wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, they entered the Promised Land, which was inhabited by various Canaanite tribes. The biblical narrative does not explicitly mention any Egyptian claim to the land. However, some scholars have suggested that the biblical account may reflect historical realities of the time, including conflicts between Egypt and the Canaanite city-states. For example, historian Donald Redford has argued that the biblical account of the conquest of Canaan reflects a historical situation in which Egypt had gained control over the region and was engaged in a struggle with the Canaanite city-states for dominance. Other scholars have suggested different interpretations. It should be noted that the question of whether Egypt had a claim to the Promised Land in 1312 BCE is a matter of historical and biblical interpretation and is subject to ongoing debate and research among scholars.